action is more important in Uganda than in other collective societies because it's a form of how people accumulate social capital. So the impact of COVID-19 and the second lockdown in Uganda has a more reaching impact than a financial impact, than a political impact. And so we want to look and see the impact on the psychological wellness of the people in Uganda. And so our first guest, Julie, is going to lead out in this conversation. So, Julie, what has been happening with our Ugandan brothers and sisters in regards to their psychological well-being?
Um, thank you very much, Judy. I hope I'm audible enough.
You are.
Um, um, well, this is a very, very timely conversation for us to have. COVID-19 came to us as a tsunami or, floods, or this may not be one of the common disasters that, commonly seen in Uganda, but I could relate it to that, the way it hit us, especially the second wave. I know it was a surprise to the globe at large, not really just Uganda alone. We are not the only ones who have gone through this. And I should say that as a country, we were a little bit lucky because we had time to know what to expect from what the rest of the world has experienced. And so this is our second wave, while many other people have had more than two waves of the pandemic. But just like any other pandemic, you don't get to see the aftermath until after the dust has settled down. And then you really count the losses, or they start making the meaning that you didn't comprehend at the time of the pandemic or at the time of the disaster. So COVID-19 has been with us for more than a year globally, but in Uganda, we feel like it's kind of a new phenomenon because the first wave was really gentle on us. You must have seen videos of our patients laughing and smiling and playing in the wards where they had been admitted. COVID had nothing to do on the population, generally speaking. I mean, there were a few losses, a few hospitalizations, but at some point we couldn't say that there was no space for patients to be taken in because we were full up. So it seemed like our healthcare system was sufficient and self-sustaining, and we seemed ready until we get to see the second wave and what it leaves behind, faces that look like this. Every time I look at that man in the corner, the border man, I feel sad for him because he is a representation of many other people who have been affected by the pandemic that way. I see that man put down his head in total frustration. He's probably giving up and doesn't know what to do because he has a family at home waiting and he has absolutely nothing to say to them or to give them at the end of the day. So as a country, this particular wave has come with 5 different variants. So the first wave was gentler on us because we had one variant and we had less sick people. So this time we have 5 different variants, including the Delta variant, which has been very, very harsh and tough on the patients who contract this particular infection. Of course, we have seen our numbers going high compared to what happened in the first wave. A lot of hospitalization until we got to know that actually our healthcare system was insufficient and it was on its knees. So we saw a lot of pressure on the hospitals because patients demanded to be admitted, and they could not understand why a hospital can turn away a patient who is in need of oxygen, who cannot breathe, who is dying. Why would they turn them away? So the hospitals had a lot of pressure to take in patients, whether they have space for them or not, whether they have the facilities to deal with the critical situation each client presented or not. So unfortunately for us as a country, we have a terrible ratio of patient to doctor. Our healthcare workers are very few compared to the population. Well, because of many reasons. One of them is that our healthcare workers are underpaid, and so they get to look for greener pastures elsewhere where they feel valued and where they feel that their contribution will probably be much more appreciated. And so it leaves us with a few, and yet we have a very big population with lots of challenges in public health. So having lost more than 20 doctors in a space of 2 weeks is a huge blow to us as a country and to the healthcare fraternity altogether. And unfortunately, most of these people who are lost are not doctors who are just coming out of medical school. We're talking about doctors with 20 years experience, 25, 30 years, 35 years of experience. So it makes them very senior in the field of medicine. And also most of them were specialized. Some of them are pediatrics, others surgeons, or different specialties. And knowing that we don't have many in each of those specialties is quite sad that we lost many such people with so much experience.
And Julie, Julie, where are these, sorry to interrupt you, where are the doctors and the practitioners going? You said you've lost them. Where are they going?
I mean, they have died because they were frontline workers and they contracted COVID-19. Well, because of many reasons. One of the key things they kept complaining about is that they don't have enough equipment. Even the personal protective equipment is not available. So they were really risking their lives and putting themselves on the line without enough protection to save lives. But then when I say others have gone out of the country, they choose to work in Kenya, where probably the pay may be better, or abroad. And so we have many of these wonderful experts in the diaspora. So, I mean, the few that we have left behind risked their lives and put their lives on the front line to save Ugandans, but they lost their lives in the process. Not all of them, but a good number of them. And even though the media focused on the key doctors or the consultants, there are nurses who have lost their lives. There are doctors who don't have 40 years of experience, who don't have 30 years of experience, but they're still doctors. They still have a very big role to play, especially given the fact that we have a poor ratio of doctor to patient. I mean, it is sometimes 1 to 10,000. That's huge. So if you remove 20 doctors at a go within such a system, then I just feel sorry for us and our tomorrow, because we will probably go to hospital and you'll find no one to help you.
Well, Julie, in your own words, I heard you speak about this second wave, as you said in your very words that there is insufficient infrastructure. There's no infrastructure, and it appears to be as if Uganda is not totally prepared for this second wave. So what I want to ask, do you know, as a social worker, can you tell our viewers, do you know about any government initiatives or programs that have been put into place to help combat this COVID-19, this second wave? Because I want to believe that it gave us enough time to prepare, and it gave us enough time to warm up. So you said in your own words that in the first season, the patients were all happy and just laughing. And did the government prepare? Did they prepare for it in any way? And if they prepare, do you know of any government initiatives that you can tell the viewers about?
Well, I can say that in terms of financial aid, we did get donations, one from Ugandans themselves, as patriotic Ugandans who love their country and they care about their country. People gave money at the onset of the pandemic, not right now, because what we needed to do was to plan ahead, not right now. This is not the time to go around all over the places purchasing medical equipment or anything. So when the pandemic started last year, organizations, individuals, everybody put whatever they had. I remember, organizations cut salaries of their staff to put it in the consolidated fund, COVID fund, to help us as a country prepare ahead of time. Government did put money in. There was a budget allocated to do all that, but there was also external aid coming in from the World Health Organization and other different partners. Unfortunately, it seems like this money did not do what it was supposed to do. There is the whole of last week and the previous week, there have been all these audits that are going on into the COVID funds and what the money was used for. And the main accounting officers don't seem to have the answers to the basic questions. Because people are asking, you promised you were going to purchase this number of beds, you promised we were going to get this number of ICU equipment. Where is it? Well, we saw the stammering has come in and the lack of speech at this point. So I also don't know, because whatever was given and entrusted to the right people, we thought we would have full accountability by now as a country, as Ugandans, but also as the partners who put their money. I think this hasn't come through as expected, including the president himself. He said he's disappointed with his workers. I hope his disappointment will translate into some kind of action on that side. But, well, if I can move on a little bit into what more we're seeing. We have seen unprecedented deaths in relation to COVID-19 in the country. For us, talking about 70 deaths a day may sound little for a country like India or US or Italy that has had higher numbers than that. But this is in relation to many, many other things. So we have seen many deaths. I remember a few deaths that have really stood out for me are people who lost parents, like both parents, on the same day due to COVID-19. They're not able to visit their parents. And I know this has happened elsewhere, but now we get to see it. It's closer to home. I saw a mother who was holding her baby in her arms, and she was on oxygen, and she knew that she was going, but that's the only moment she had to say goodbye to her newborn baby. And many other mothers who have given birth with COVID-19 and have not lived to nurse their babies for even a day. It's been very devastating. I saw a bride who contracted COVID-19 on her wedding, and 3 weeks after the wedding, she passed on. I mean, it's been very devastating. And what has been more devastating is that we have seen more young people affected. More young people, we're talking about ages of 15 to 35 generally, most deaths have been within that age group. So in the previous pandemic, the young people made fun of the older people. Well, not in a bad way, but trying to find some happiness in the gloom. And they used to remind them, you need to go for vaccination, or you need to isolate, or you need to close yourself in because of your age group. But this time round, the virus has been very, very harsh on the young people. So many young married couples have lost, a spouse, or both of them have lost, have gone and leave very young children. For a country that already has a huge orphan burden due to HIV and AIDS and due to many other things, including our low life expectancy, this has been very devastating, because then we add on that burden of orphans and vulnerable children. So the other thing is that this particular wave has been difficult because people didn't get the food assistance like they did in the first wave. What happened is that government had decided that they will give money to those who are needy. The procedure for deciding who is needy wasn't very clearly spelled out. So some of the people who have actually received some money are not needy at all. There is a message that has been making rounds on social media here in Uganda, of somebody who received that assistance. That assistance is equivalent. It's a Uganda shillings 100,000. I don't know how much that may be in dollars, but it's less than $1 a day.
That's $30.
$30. Yeah, $30 for 42 days of lockdown. So $30, if you divide that into 42 days, you have less than $1 a day for those families to survive. Unfortunately, as we speak, some have not received this assistance. And today is day 21, I think, of the lockdown. So that's halfway gone of no food, no assistance. This has made the food insecurity or the food security crisis worse for us as a country. So I was saying somebody received this assistance, but the balance on his mobile money account was 27 million shillings, Uganda shillings. It was over 27 million. So you wonder if that person is really needy or not. But, well, he's received the money.
Julie, just to interrupt you a bit, we heard the minister say that any person in Uganda, if their phone number if their mobile money number has ever received above 500 Ugandan thousand shillings, they are not eligible to get this aid. So you're talking about someone who has 27 million. How does that work?
Already on their account, yeah. And they added another 100,000 as a needy person.
Oh,
that's devastating. So I have seen a group of women. I saw a group of women today who were celebrating as the messages came in onto their phones. But these women were actually at their places of work. So they were actually working. They're not locked down at home. They have been considered among the essential workers, meaning that they still have a means to survive. But these are the people who are receiving the money. Well, so this particular wave and lockdown has come with a lot of economic hardship generally, because people have nothing to give. In the first wave, there was something to give, something to share. We were coming from a place of plenty. But now we've been in a place of scarcity, and having another lockdown, there is nothing to share with one another. So it's quite hard. Sorry.
So I'm sure that,
generally,
I'm sure that because there's so many different impacts, so many different things happening and going on, that it's far-reaching within families, within individuals, within organizations, and also the community at large.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So generally, as a population, before we even get down to individuals, what has been the general reaction to our general, subjective well-being? And when we say our subjective well-being, we're talking about the way we perceive, our happiness, our joy, our satisfaction, and our level of general well-being in all aspects of life, socially, mentally, spiritually. So how has COVID-19 impacted on that? One of the things is that, out of everything bad, sometimes something good comes up. So as a country and as a general population, we are seeing more resilience, and in some circles you're seeing more social support coming up, while in other places it's different. The inadequate supplies, the inadequate information, or even access to information, because really in Uganda data is expensive. People may access some of this information freely on the internet. People cannot afford to be on the net to access that kind of data, or sometimes they're on their radios, or they can't afford to pay for their television subscription. So that access to information kind of comes down, generally speaking. So but as a population, in terms of mental health, we're seeing more pervasive anxiety. Pervasive anxiety is this kind of anxiety where people are worried, for example, about the virus. Even before they get it, they are worried about how I will be like when that moment comes and I don't have oxygen. And then I'm taken to hospital and I can't be admitted and I don't have oxygen, and then I'm dying. They are already imagining what this may feel like because they have seen it on their relatives, on the other people. And so it brings that anxiety. How will I be like when my lungs have collapsed? How will it feel when I'm in isolation and my family can't visit me and I die alone? Because that's what has happened to many of those other people. So that kind of anxiety is across the board, really, in the general population. And it has been said that many of the patients who actually died out of the fear, out of that kind of anxiety. But also there is that a specific and uncontrolled fear. Sometimes people are sad, they are worried, but they cannot put a finger to it. They may have a meal, so they're not worried about that meal for that day. They have a roof over their heads, so they're not standing out in the rain. But there is that kind of worry and uncontrolled fear. It goes on and on. You go to sleep worried, you wake up worried. There is also that disabling loneliness. I mean, isolation. We are a community that lives and thrives with social relations, just like Judy said. For us, a child is never raised alone. It's the entire village and the next village and the next village. So for some families, they have never had to, just stay alone with a child, or some of these people were locked down away from their families, and now we can't have people moving from one district to another. So you're all by yourself. In Africa, all by yourself is a very foreign concept. Maybe in the US, you're used to that. Here, it is very foreign. We don't have that. So that kind of loneliness is very disabling. But also we have seen very significant changes in lifestyle and people having to make very profound adaptations generally. Definitely we have had a very high increase in our psychiatric conditions across the country. Our psychiatric hospitals are full to capacity and they are overwhelmed. not with COVID-19 patients, but with mental health patients. And we're talking about a general frustration and boredom. You see, people were just beginning to recover from the first lockdown impacts. People lost jobs, people lost everything. So they were beginning to, like resilient people, rethink their future and see what they can do. And boom, here we are. We're back to square one. So the frustration is there. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to find out from you, Julie, and for our viewers also, is there, you said in your very words that out of everything bad, something good comes out. So what good has come out from this total lockdown that the president announced? Is there any good? Are we seeing the numbers come down?
Yes, that has been one of the upside of this lockdown, and I think that's what it was meant to do. We are seeing a significant decrease in the number of infections. The hospitals are saying they have a breather now. There is space. I mean, if anyone was unwell and they needed critical care, it's available because there is space right now. We have a huge increase in the number of recoveries across the country, but also a decrease definitely in the deaths because we have increased recoveries. So we are seeing, we're beginning to see the cloud clear up, and people see that, okay, we are going to get out of it. 2 weeks ago, it was gloom and darkness all over the country. Everywhere you would hear wails and cries from the neighborhood to another house, and you cannot even go into help because you're crying yourself. So this has really changed, at least in the last week, and we continue to see more recoveries now.
I have a question, Julie. So when we're looking at the clinical impact, the long-term clinical impact of someone who, for example, maybe has congestive heart failure and they have COVID, and we see the long-term impact of after they've recovered from COVID, we see the long-term impact on their, let's say, on clinical presentation. What are the long-term psychological impacts that you foresee as a clinician?
Well, one of the things, first of all, I need to say is that even though we're seeing an increase in the recoveries, we are learning as a population that a discharge from hospital does not mean total recovery.
That's right.
The process of actual healing and restoration and recuperation of a patient is long term. So we are seeing a lot of emphasis on home-based care from the health professionals. So we are learning more about home-based care and being caregivers at home because of the long-term effects of COVID-19 on all these patients. So it's one of the things that probably is one of the good things we're learning from this, that there is that general increase in an interest in home-based care. Earlier, everyone was thinking it's hospital and hospital alone, but we're learning that our hospitals are not enough, but also it's not the best place to stay. So we're learning that, but also the other side of it, which is still one of the main things that we're grappling with as a country, the psychological impact, because that is not seen. And so a lot of emphasis is going to the physical or the somatic part of it, which is really evident, like probably somebody is unable to breathe or someone is restless, that can be seen. But the psychological impact of that, and people who have been in ICUs and faced death face to face, and how that impacted on them is one of those things we're yet to really, really deal with and have a very, very systematic kind of approach and mechanism to make sure that that is addressed. Because if it is not, then post-COVID, we will have to deal with many, many psychological issues with the population. And probably that's part of what I'm going to talk about a little bit in my next slides. But I just wanted to pass through this quickly that, and I already shared these statistics, that this particular pandemic has affected mostly ages 18 to 24, and then ages 24 to 49. Now, those combined together really make a huge part of the population, remembering that our population is one of the youngest in the world. We have over 60% of the population falling within the age of 18 to 35. And so that really puts our future into jeopardy. But also the other thing is that maybe we are learning that with age comes more resilience, because this time around we're seeing people of 65 and above being less affected in terms of mental health when it comes to this pandemic. Young people have more suicidal thoughts, probably because they having to deal with isolation, and it's one of those things that they have never had to deal with. I mean, we're always in school. A lot of the young years of our lives are really spent in school, and so that comes with a lot of socializing. So this time round, people have to stay all by themselves, learn to be self-sufficient, and that doesn't come easy. So these are borrowed statistics, but I can really say that it's the same kind of thing that we're seeing here, of more suicidal thoughts, severe depression, very severe depression, high levels of perceived stress and depression, and very high levels of anxiety. And looking at this means that there is more that comes with that. What does a highly anxious person do? Then that is where the problem comes. They may become abusive towards those around them. They may become dangerous, or they may abuse drugs. Drug abuse has really gone high during this kind of season. So beyond just the statistics of who is depressed, who is suicidal, is a lot of other more and more worrying trends that come with that. So generally, we have been talking about that, and I'll go through this very quickly. The levels of stress and anxiety, the anger, the frustration, the loss and grief. And for us, I'll just talk a bit about the loss and grief, because when we don't bury our dead, when we don't spend a night with our dead in our houses, which we do, it means we almost have no closure. And this is what has happened to many, many, many families. So the mass grief around the country is something we are yet to figure out how this will be handled. People have not buried their loved ones because, well, movement is banned, and from one district to another, but also burial is restricted to 20 people only. That includes the clergy who are officiating, the family, and the people themselves who are doing the burial. You would call them undertakers. Well, we don't have undertakers here. So it's usually, people who volunteer to come and do that. Interestingly, that has been taken away by the pandemic. Everyone has been forced to hire services of a funeral service to do that, which is quite expensive. So, I mean, literally, you lose somebody and you're home alone in your house, crying alone, because you wait for the body to be brought the next day straight to the grave. That is unheard of for us. Abroad, it's okay. You probably have funeral homes. Here, our homes are our funeral homes when somebody dies. So you get to spend a night with the dead and, have closure and say goodbye. That hasn't happened. So it has left a lot of non-disclosure across the board.
Julie,
and,
Julie, I want to bring Sharon in as the women's counselor. Sharon, how have you seen the impact? Like all of these things, I'm sure you've seen in your service in your communities. How has all of this impacted the women that you serve and their families? Like with everything that Julie has shared. Sharon, are you there? Okay, maybe she'll come back. Julie, you can go to the next because we want to keep the conversation. This is beautiful. Yeah, it's not a beautiful situation.
Yeah.
But it's great to see that how it looks like on the individual level. You shared there was a slide that you shared where there's a lot of young people who are, who have suicidal thoughts. I wonder, has there been an increase in domestic violence? We heard about that in the beginning of COVID, but I'm anticipating an increase in domestic violence, an increase in not just suicidal thoughts and ideations, but actual followed through suicides. Is that has that been calculated, or is that part of the data that you've collected at all?
Yes, yes. Honestly, for many young people, these thoughts have actually been realized and lives have been lost, but mostly between the ages of 14 and 18, unfortunately, because of, hopelessness and depression, and they probably can't see beyond what is now. But also, just like you mentioned, the domestic violence really has gone up, and this is both towards spouses but also children. That's right. And that's the most depressing thing, that because they cannot talk, they are locked in there and they are really being abused. It is a very, very sad situation. Now we are realizing that school has always been a safe haven for such children. But unfortunately, it's taken away. Yeah.
So Julie, for the common person, the peasant, or our viewers and people back home in Uganda, how have you as social workers, what's your role and how have you practically helped in this situation? Because we have seen all this, how are you intervening and what's your intervention and how are you helping on ground as social workers in general?
And therapists.
Well, one of the things that is going on, it's two-way. So we are seeing an increase in the number of, wellness and mental health seminars and conferences happening, but that then limits those kinds of interventions to the elite because they have access to data and internet and even these gadgets, because there are those people who use the analog phones. We call them katoch here because it comes, it comes with a torch to help you see in the dark. But it's not a smartphone, so they can't access these services. So these services have really gone on the increase. Companies are really engaging therapists to talk to their employers and all that, to the employees. But it is limited to those who can actually afford it.
So you mean on the village level, you don't have any programs or any initiatives to go
to be honest,
down to the village people who need such counseling and help?
To be honest, we are not doing that because, one, the restriction with the meetings have been banned, and you can understand that. Unless it's a very, very critical meeting, and then like a burial, that is limited to 20 people. So having community engagements or community dialogue is not possible at this time. Well, partly definitely because of the guidelines that have been issued by government, but also because, you go to a community and everyone is burying a son, a daughter. It's not the right time to even have that conversation. That's one of the things that is really limiting this kind of thing. But then also the other platforms where we have been providing this is through the churches, the mosques, because then these people, it doesn't matter if you're a peasant or a low-income earner, you go to church. And so churches have been providing this, but see, church is locked. Church is also under lockdown, clearly for good reasons. So it's hard to actually reach those people, except for some radio programs that could be aired once in a while here and there, talking about, to support people mentally, and they're not really across the board. I think that there is still a gap in that area. Really, there is.
Wow. Thank you so much, Julie. Hold that thought right there. Dear viewers, this is your voice. We want to hear your voice and your take on all these issues that Julie is talking about, and the psychological impact of COVID on Ugandans and normal people, normal citizens of Uganda. So you are free to get part of this conversation through your WhatsApp numbers. You can call the number is on your screen, 978-413-6249. And Judy, is very, very touching what Julie is sharing with us. All I hear is unpreparedness. It seems as if there is no preparedness at all from the side of the government.
And it's compound because, as Julie said, that churches are closed, and for a lot of people, in the spiritual community, worship is a form of therapy. You bring your burden to the cross, or you give away this burden. But then when you don't have the space or the room and the freedom to do that, it's almost impaired. It's not even imperative, but it's almost like you're forced to carry this load, this burden, and there's no offloading. And so it's a setup for failure on so many levels. So many levels, Julie. One thing I wanted to ask, because we're coming close to the end of the show, we're going to be waiting for our viewers to call in. How have you, as a therapist, Julie, because it's important for caregivers, therapists, healthcare personnel to be able to take care of themselves. How have you been caring for yourself, and how can our viewers who are in a situation like this, how can they take on caring for themselves and managing when they don't have those social supports, when maybe they don't have access to a therapist because they're in the village? How can we support them, and what can other people do in this crisis? Because it's a crisis.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Well, taking care of ourselves is very important. So it does call for me and all the other therapists to practice self-care. And that's an entire concept of self-care and unpacking that. So really knowing that you cannot give what you don't have is very important for therapists at such a time. So we stay. The other thing is staying in touch with other people. We tend to think that asking for help is not a good thing, or people think that a therapist doesn't need any kind of help. But they do, the same way doctors do. I have seen doctors breaking down in the middle of this pandemic, crying like babies in those hospital wards, which literally means that at the core, we're all human and human beings with feelings, with the conscious, with all those other things, and none is made out of stone. So reaching out to other people for help is very, very important. And sometimes it could be actually very professional help. There are times I have been confused myself about information, and I talk to the different, doctors to try and understand this and triangulate what this actually means, because with COVID-19 there is so much information and some of it is clashing, so trying to make sense of all this information sometimes it's not easy. So it's good to talk to a professional depending on what you really need. Really, maybe that's what I can say for myself, but for the for the viewers and the listeners out there, one of the important things that we would really want to emphasize right now, and to the population, or when you talk to your people back home in Uganda, is to make sure that people grieve their losses. We have a way, people are thinking we need to postpone this grief until after COVID-19 is done, and then we can grieve properly. I need to grieve my friend properly after COVID-19. There will not be time to do that. Grief can't be postponed. Now is the time. When the loss happens, then we need to allow ourselves to grieve those losses, because it has happened. We don't know what will happen in future. So probably for people who thought that I will postpone and grieve next year, they didn't know there'll be a second and third and fourth wave. So there is no time to postpone. It's okay to allow yourself to grieve, to break down, to cry, to question, to feel all this range of emotions. They are very normal and they're expected. But also this is a very good time to strengthen our support system. I know that we are being asked to socially distance, but also while we socially distance, nobody is saying that there should be social that kind of isolation. We can still talk to people over the phone, over WhatsApp, over a text message, over an email. So while we are physically isolated, socially we're still connected, and we should allow ourselves to have that connection. But also we need to find a purpose and meaning in all this within ourselves. We may not find that outside, but within. And probably that's where our spirituality really comes in, that we try to understand ourselves and the times we live in through the lenses of God, through what religion can offer at such a time, and the hope that comes with that. As Paul said, 3 things are very important: faith, hope, and love. So this is the time to really show one another love, reach out to people. I have realized that people tend to be quiet in these times, and they don't reach out. But one, they have no means of reaching out. Really, very honestly, somebody does not have airtime to call. They don't have data to reach out. So if you notice somebody is offline, reach out to them, call your relatives, find out how they are, call your friends. It's a time also to share, because really government will not come through for everyone. They don't have the ability to do that. And so there is no scheme that is coming on for everyone. We have to find a way of sharing the little that we have among ourselves. So I would really encourage somebody, if they have an extra, meal for 3 days ahead and somebody doesn't have today, we can share. We can share and help each other. But also understanding ourselves as we wrap up this is very, very important. Self-awareness and trying to understand when those signals show up that you're probably slipping into depression and things are getting out of hand. The suicidal thoughts are beginning to come because you start thinking in a different way. Understanding who you are and being able to monitor yourself, your thoughts, and see that now it is getting out of hand is very important, because that's the point where you actually seek for help, because you're able to understand that I am failing to handle this on my own. And then maybe lastly is to communicate with transparency. This time is a very difficult time. If you have commitments, it's a time where you pick up a phone and tell somebody, hey, I promised you that I'll come through on this by the end of this month, but I am not working. I'm not being paid for the entire lockdown, so I don't think I'll be able to do that. Instead of, keeping on promising next week, when you actually know that for the next many weeks, you will not be getting anything. So it's good to be honest and open with our communication. If you need help, ask for the help. If you really hard up and there is no meal in your house and you can ask a friend, there is nothing wrong with saying, hi, we starved through last night. Can you share something for breakfast? I mean, I have nothing to feed the kids or my family. It is helpful. And finding our strength in God, as I said. So that's pretty much what I think we can try and build around. It's not all, because that time is not enough, but I think we can always build on that. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you. Thank you
Julie.
so much. That was very, very educative and very touching.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Julie, for the wonderful, heartwarming and encouraging session. You've really encouraged our viewers and inspired us and helped us to take caution. So Sharon, I can see you back. Sharon.
Yes, David, I'm on.
Yeah, sorry we had lost you. So what do you have to say? You've listened to Julie elaborate on the psychological impact. And Judy here had a question. You had a question.
Yes, my question to you, Sharon, was how have you seen the psychological and even the psychosocial impact on the women in your district that you serve? How has it been showing up there?
Yes, so being a leader in a slum area, so when you look at the residential area of Wandegea, where I sit as a representative at the division, it's a slum area. So as Julie said, this lockdown has impacted a huge effect on us, majorly the women, simply because we are at home. The men are not working. Gender-based violence is at a high raise. I also want to say that we are going to have a huge number of teenage motherhood as the slums. Kawempe is one of the areas that has a lot of slum areas. So people being at home, they're not working. Kids being at home, they're not at school. You expect a lot of criminal acts to be done on our children. Yet, when you look at the law enforcers in Uganda, they don't really do what they're supposed to be doing. I'll give an example of the family protection unit at every police station. I think it's one of the offices that is not facilitated enough to carry out their work, the work that they are supposed to be doing. So you expect a lot of unspeakable things that are going to be done to our kids, that are going to be done to women, yet they don't have anywhere to report. So me as a leader at a local level, I started up what we call a women's desk, where women come freely and get a chance to open up, because there are some offenses that are done to women and they can't share it to the opposite sex. So I'm always at the office of the LC, so that when someone comes with a problem, either it concerns the girl child, whether it concerns the women, they can freely open up to me, being a fellow woman to them.
So, Sharon, there's a question that we asked Julie earlier on. Being a leader and a woman counselor, what initiatives are there? What has the government put in place to combat this COVID pandemic situation on the village level, on the council level, on the municipality level? What's there on ground?
They've not really done anything. That is, I should be honest with you, because when you look at our government, it has totally failed us, simply because when they look at what to help the Ugandans, they only look at those things that are going to be where they are going to be benefiting from. It is really a shame when you look at the women, we are at the forefront of fighting the pandemic. When you look at the people who are leaders in the Ministry of Health, they are the women, but they are not looking at how COVID is affecting fellow women down there. So they've not done anything. It is only a personal initiative, as me and other fellow leaders who can look at a local level and say, this has to be done, so I should do it individually without even being facilitated. You think of an idea that can help a fellow women at a local level, then you do it. Because I believe being a leader or putting a change in a community, you don't have specifically to be a leader, but you look at what is needed, what the community needs, what a neighbor or someone around you needs, so you go for it. When you just have a sit back and say the government will help us, my dear, you can't achieve anything, or you can't assist a fellow human being. You just need to do the needfully and help another human being. But the government has not helped us at all.
Thank you, Sharon, for that. Someone in the chat wants to know. He says, this is Paul Nyanzi. He says, I think the discussants for the delegations, one thing I can ask, and this is his question for Julie, he wants to know more about the VHOs on the village level, because under the lockdown, people there are suffering more due to lack of health care. Can you say something about the VHOs on the village level, both Julie and Sharon? Julie, you go first.
Well, the village health officers, what I know is that they have been receiving training to be able to support the healthcare workers in the main healthcare centers, because they're the first point of contact. I may not be able to comment very extensively on how this is being rolled out, because the last time I saw on the news, they were complaining that they do not have equipment to be able to deal with the cases that come to them, or even any kind of facilitation in terms of transportation or communication. So they said yes, some of them received the training, but and that was it. There was no facilitation for them to be able to do their work. So I probably am not in position to comment on if the facilitation has come or not, but it seems like they were incapacitated. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Sharon, what do you have to say about the same question?
So what I have to say about the VHTs, those they call them the village health teams. When you look at the setup of the LC, the local LC1 committee, in every village, there has to be a team of 9 people that sit on the VHT team. But we expect that team to be knowing each and every corner of the village, the household, the needy people, the people that maybe have to travel from that community to a next health center. Those are the people who contracted the HIV and so on. Those people who really need the first health care services. You expect to run to the village health team to give you that information. But it is really a shame that when the government was creating that task force, it took an initiative to employ the LRDCs, the ESOs on that team, but they didn't facilitate the VHTs. Yet these people have been working with the communities. They know those who really need help from the government. And in my own perspective, I think, our government always is scared of people who are really informed. They would really portray the truth that they don't normally want the public to know. So they just they pushed them aside, showing that they either don't need their help, yet they are very important in the times that we are facing right now.
So where is we want to know, as a leader and a women councillor, where is the blockage of these funds and the facilitation? Because we know the parliament has allocated monies for all these programs. So where is the blockage? Why is it that the money is not reaching the common person on the ground? Is the money lost between you yourselves as leaders, or why is it that people are not receiving this kind of healthcare and help?
I would say that the very exactly people that are releasing the money to help the common man or the common people of Uganda, they are the very, very person, they are the immediate person that are mismanaging this money. Simply because when you look at the setup of Kampala, every the political leaders that were elected by the people, they've been blocked to be fully partly of fighting this pandemic, simply because either we are anti-government, I don't know, because when you look at every political leader that was elected this time around Kampala and Metropolitan, we are from the opposition party. Like for my incidents, I'm an NUP member. So I think they're just holding the money, pretending that they've released the money, yet they are not letting it reach out to the people that are supposed to be getting this money. I'm going to give an example of the so-called Nabanja's money and all that. When Nabanja was giving out money, surprisingly, the first call that she made, it went up to Gulu. And by the end of yesterday, they were saying that it's only 6 people in Kampala that have received those messages. We are still having a lot of questions about that. And in a way that they arranged all the team that they are going to be working with, the LC1 chairmen are only responsible of identifying the lists that came from the Prime Minister's office. The LC3, with the councillors, we were not let to be even part of this process. Remember, we are just from elections, so you expect us to be knowing each and every corner of the village, because we canvassed all the areas looking for votes. So you expect us to have the information that so and so, a household from this corner needs help. They kicked us out of this system, in order not to identify, because when we are just from elections, so we need to be very transparent. We were going to maybe let that information that government doesn't want the common man to know. So that is the reason why they kicked us out. So we are not part of this process, of the whole process of writing the list and so on. We are not part of it.
Oh, thank you.
I think that the right process would be the government would have worked hand in hand with the political leaders, because we honestly, we know all the corners of the communities, because these are the very people that we went to asking for votes.
So according to your conversation, it seems, Judy, there is a lot of political bias in all this COVID.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very, very sad. Dear viewers, you can feel free to call in. The number is, once again, 978-413-6249. If you have a question or a comment, for these ladies. I don't know if we have Tony in Soboga. Is Tony on? Tony in Soboga? Do we have Tony? Tony, can you hear me?
Paul Nyanzi also has another question. He's asked, as a leader, what's your role in community to addressing the COVID pandemic and the girl child before government support? I think that's for both Sharon and Julie. What is your role in addressing the COVID pandemic in regards to how it's impacting our young girls? We talked earlier that we've been seeing an increase in teenage and pregnancies of young girls from sexual violence at home. So how are you two ladies impacting that situation there on the ground?
Personally, me on a personal level, I've tried to engage with the community as much as I can. With or without money, people out there just need someone to listen to them. Mm-hmm. A person might be at home, he no longer works, he's stuck in the house with the kids. When you look at the setup of the community that I lead, we have a lot of single mothers, so they just need a shoulder to kneel on. So I will not stop engaging with the community just to give them a listening ear. I think it is not all about the monies.
Yeah, there's
someone needs someone to be there for them.
Yeah.
That is why I took an initiative to start up the woman's desk at the LC1's office, in that it makes it easier for me to engage with the community. Someone in this situation whereby everyone is so frustrated, like there are a lot of stress in the people, someone needs someone to go to, and he or she opens up, then you find a solution, because I totally believe that a problem shared is a problem solved. There is nothing that we can do. That's what I think.
Yeah, before Julie comes in, Julie's really very, very upset and very demoralizing, because I'm trying to think about all these things. Wandegea being a suburb near the capital city, Kampala, I wonder, it could have been one of the cities or one of the areas that are really getting this aid, and because it gives me questions that what is happening in Pakwach, in Amuru district, in Luka district, in Mbale, in Tororo, those far places. If Wandegea, that is very, very, like, is it even 3 kilometers away from the capital city? If this is what is the situation.
Actually, it is only 2 kilometers. We are neighboring the State House, then Mulago Hospital, and Makerere University. We are in between there. So we are neighbors to the State House, surprisingly, the Nakasero.
So Sharon, being part of NUP, are you not just trying to blackmail the Ugandan government? Because you people in the opposition tend to almost always just don't see any good out of the government and tend to just speak about the bad things. So are you not just trying to blackmail the government?
Honestly, if there is anyone watching online and he's from that community, Wandegea Kawempe, he can testify about this. I'm not being biased, but we are not thought of. And being in Kawempe division, when you look at Kawempe, there are some divisions that we normally call them the command centers and all that. Kawempe is popularly known to be a opposition division. So you know what the government normally does when it sees a certain community that is full of people who are defying at each and everything, who are opposition, who normally listen to the opposition leaders, they will never think about you guys. They will only focus on areas where they have support. We've known this, we've seen this. So it is not me trying to politicize this, whatever is going on. No, Because when you look at the pandemic that hit us as a country, it is not identifying only the oppositions that will go and affect only the opposition. This is affecting each and every Ugandan, whether you've been a victim of COVID or not. You will feel the heat of being in this situation, either economically, social-wise. It will hit you.
Wow, thank you so much. I want to bring in Julie. Julie, let's get your take on this as we prepare to wind up this conversation. Julie, are you still on?
Yes, yes, I'm still here. Thank you very much. Personally, and also as a community of therapists, what we have been doing is provide pro bono services during this season. We know that it's quite difficult for people to really access these services and at a price. So I think from the onset of the pandemic, really, since last year.
Julie, fast hold that thought right there. We have a caller online.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, David. Thank you very much for the show. This is in Uganda, Massachusetts.
Yes, Tony.
I'm very sorry. I think I had some issues with my network, and I couldn't join in via Zoom.
Okay, you're live on air.
Thank you very much. But I'm very thankful for the submissions by the guests, Julie, and
Sharon. Yeah.
Yes, and the entire team. My contribution and compliment on what has been said is, I think, in my opinion, I think the government of Uganda has displayed the highest levels of incompetence dealing with COVID-19. First of all, in my opinion, still, I think the government underestimated.
There is a lot of feedback. Do you mind calling back again?
It's fine.
Okay, I'm going to have to get back to you, Tony. You can call back again. Thank you so much. That was Tony Nsubuga from Massachusetts. We will get him back. Yes, you can go on, Julie.
Okay, thank you. I was saying that really as a community and also at a personal level, we have made our services, and I have actually made my services free for this season, so that we are able to reach as many people as need our help. And sometimes people are actually not even able to call on for you to have a conversation with them. So you instead have to call your client and make sure that you reach them. Sometimes we have a service here in Uganda when you don't have any credit on your phone and you're not able to call or communicate, you send a free message which says, "Call me back." And so when somebody sends you a "call me back," it's more like an SOS. Then you call them. And sometimes we get those messages where somebody's saying, "Please call me back," and you call them. Some people are unable to speak because of the situations they're in, whether it's an abusive environment. And so you have to chat with them literally on the phone so that there is no voice. They can't be heard speaking to anyone about anything. So we have been doing that, but also for this particular pandemic, I managed to gather some guts to go to hospital. In the first pandemic, I really stayed away from hospital, but
Julie,
this time round,
Julie, would you just hold that thought right there? I'm going to get back to you. Let me get this call again.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. This is Your Voice. You're live on air. Yeah.
Thank you very much, David. This is Massachusetts.
Okay, we can hear you.
All right, thank you very much. So, for the feedback before, what I wanted to say is, first of all, the government has showed us the highest levels of incompetence dealing with COVID-19 pandemic. In my opinion, I think the military regime, first of all, kind of underestimated the pandemic. At first, it weaponized it and used it to target a certain group of people and a certain region. And like we have seen, the government put in place curfew enforcements. And these curfew enforcements were mainly related to the pandemic. But considering the way these enforcements have been implemented in certain regions of Uganda, and to be specific, the central region, as opposed to the other regions, you realize it communicates a lot. First of all, that maybe the pandemic hit was specific when it hit Uganda, and that has compromised people's perception of the pandemic. Now, understand today's topic. We are talking about the impact of COVID-19, psychological impact. Now, when people can't perceive the pandemic in its rightful nature, it affects them. Because we see people die of natural causes, natural deaths, but everything is painted COVID-19. Now, if you keep lying to the people, you want to collectively treat COVID-19 as a pandemic and deal with it in a solvable manner. But you're lying to them, you're affecting them instead. That's one. And two, government has displayed incompetence in a way that, first of all, this same government we are talking about has over the time communicated how the statistics of COVID-19 in Uganda, meaning they have the statistics and they have the specific individuals that have been hit. Now, if they can't work with the Ministry of Health, I mean, if the Ministry of Health cannot work with the Prime Minister's office to make sure that
the affected people
get the funds and on time, and they come out to say that actually the lists we have, like we've seen before, in the course of this week, that the lists we have, most of the people on these lists are dead. That implies government is not willing to give out this money. As I conclude, I think yesterday or 2 days back, there is a video that has been circulating and trending on social media platforms where the Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Nabanja Rubina, was making a call to someone who she purported to be a recipient of the COVID money. When I saw people clapping and rejoicing, I thought Honorable Robin Nabanja had actually launched a spaceship that was delivering money to individuals. Only to realize that people were clapping that the first transaction was very successful. Now, if you have ministers clapping and rejoicing and uploading a service that the people of Uganda pay for, a service that was hired by the government of Uganda and people of Uganda pay through taxes, a mobile money transaction that so and so receive the money, then I think we're on completely a very wrong route.
So your final advice?
My final advice, the people in the diaspora, we need to keep pushing. We need to keep exposing all the channels through which the military regime has been siphoning these monies. I'll give before I conclude. You remember in 2020, the State Department gave Uganda, I think, what, 900 million US dollars as COVID response, COVID relief. In June, that was, I think, in the same year, the government of Uganda established a 6 metric ton mango factory in Yumbe district. And it was purportedly to add value, to offer employment opportunities to the people in Yumbe. And part of the money that was injected in this project was part of the 900 billion US dollar extension to Uganda. And 8.9 billion Uganda shillings, that's about 2 point something US dollars, was injected in the factory that lasted 4 months old. After 4 months, the factory is nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
It collapsed. So we need to keep exposing. We need to keep alerting Georgieva, the MD for IMF. We need to keep alerting World Bank, David Malpass, that the money you're giving to Uganda as development, as COVID response, is actually being siphoned. Just yesterday, 2 days ago, we saw the president launch the vaccine manufacturing unit in Matugahia, and His Excellency William Ruto of Kenya was present, where he praised and applauded the president for enabling investors in East Africa to invest in East Africa. But we all know that apart from the foundation stone that was laid right there by these two mafia friends, nothing is going to happen. You just keep watch of that stone. It's going to be there, time in and time out, year after year, and nothing will happen.
Thank you.
But they do all this to show these
Tony, as you wind up, because of our time, we are running out of time.
Yes. Thank you very much, David. As I wind up, they do this to show that actually the money they are sending to Uganda is benefiting Ugandans. Yet, it's being embezzled. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was Ntubuga. Yeah, Judy, with the ladies as you wind up.
So I want to extend, first of all, a big thank you to both Sharon and Julie for being with us on the show. We've had one other female guest, but now we've been dominating this show with the female energy here. So I want to thank you, ladies, for being on the show. Any closing remarks for you, Julie, as we wrap up?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think that, like we say, the pandemic has has brought out some good things for us. We have learned that we can be resilient as a people, but also we have learned that social support cannot be replaced by technology or any of these other things. So my final words is that let us continue supporting each other. I know that many of our family and friends are in the diaspora, but I will tell you that right now, the families back here, your friends, your networks, they need you. Reach out to them, support them. I know you have also been there, but probably you're the best people to help Ugandans also get through this phase. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie. And Sharon, your closing remarks.
Sharon, your closing remarks. Sharon, are you there? It seems we've lost Sharon due to network issues in Uganda, but I also in a special way want to appreciate Subuga Tony from Massachusetts and my brother Nyanzi Paul. Thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you for being here. Thank you to all of our guests, our watchers, our committed fans, and our fellow people in the struggle. Thank you for all that you are, for what you are doing for Uganda. and we hope to see
You
you.
usually give viewers action points. So
Oh,
what?
Julie did that today.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, very, very good. It was really wonderful and educative kind of conversation today.
Because we endeavor to bring to you, our viewers, a different plethora of programs that include scholarship.
Yeah.
And so today's was a very scholarly program. And so we thank you both, our ladies. And God willing, we will be here with you next weekend. I'm Judy Bukenya.
And I'm David Chiravira.
Good night.
Good night.